Beaumont Newhall is today recognized as the leading photographic historian.
It really didn't start out with a collection. It started out with an idea.
An idea. Mm-hmm.
The Museum of Modern Art, when it was founded in 1928, had the very radical idea for that time that photography should be one of the arts, along with architecture, industrial design, theater arts, and I was working at the museum as librarian. But I had my hobby of photography, which I pursued with great effort, and having been trained as an art historian, I looked at photography in the way that I'd been taught to look at painting and sculpture. And one fine day, the director of the museum in 1936, Alfred H. Barr, said, "We've been planning an exhibition of photography ever since we opened, and wouldn't you like to do it?" And I said, "Fine." And he said, "We have a budget for it, and you'll probably have to travel abroad." Well, I didn't have to, but I said quickly, yes. And that was the beginning. And I built the exhibition entirely from material which was borrowed. It was borrowed from Europe, from private collectors in Europe, and from America.
Now, was it, it seems to be, it was a chronological development of...
Yes, my idea that the first thing that the Museum of Modern Art should do if it was going to pursue photography as a branch of its activity was to have an overall look to see what had happened in the past. And so we decided to make this show chronological, beginning, well, it began with a camera obscura. When people came into the exhibition, they faced a lens, and then they walked. It was a walk-in camera. It was a room, literally, about 12 by 12 by 12, with a sheet of ground glass hanging in the middle, and there was the image of all the people coming in on the ground glass. Had the same idea at the same time, and he's the most famous, perhaps, of them all, Louis-Jacques Mondet Daguerre. Daguerre was a scene painter, and to make these great illusionistic pictures, paintings, 40 feet by 60 feet, mind you.
Yes.
He used the camera, and then he got the idea.
And
all the time, a fourth man, William Henry Fox Talbot of Laycock Abbey outside Bath in England, was experimenting with another technique. And the techniques of Talbot and Daguerre were the ones that survived. I think we might show the folks what happens here. There's a piece of glass. There's a piece of glass which contains a photograph that is put into this peculiar kind of viewer that's called a diascope.
And the diascope, let's see, get on the right camera here.
And this, it simply has a mirror in the bottom. And light comes down through the transparency, and there you can see it. Those of you who have your color set will be quite find this a quite startling image. I'm afraid it doesn't come through in black and white. And one of the things that fascinates me is that the way the image is formed, the color is exactly the same principle as the color in the color television set today.
Your triangular formation of the three primary colors.
The three colored lights, red, green, and blue. And the plate is covered with starch grains, which are alternately dyed in red, green, and blue. And that's the piece of glass is covered with that first, and then it's covered with gelatin emulsion. And what happens is these little grains record the amount of red, green, and blue light. And then by a reversal process, you're allowed to see the grains which acted as filters.
And this is a transparency then, a true transparency as we know them today. And this was about 1908?
Well, it was invented in 1907. First shown in this country in 1908. So these pictures must be a little bit after that time.
Yeah.
And this was the first popular color process because you didn't have to have special equipment. Anybody could put one of these plates in his camera.
And who did the developing on these? Was this all?
This was by French brothers, Auguste and Louis Lumiere. And they're the ones that perfected the motion picture projection with the cinematograph in 1895. I think we'd better back up to explain the significance of this. Perhaps most of you, when you saw on the screen this box marked dry plates, what in the world do you mean by dry plates? Why should there be such an emphasis on the word dry? Well, up to 1880, all photographs were made on wet plates on glass, pieces of glass that were made light sensitive by the photographer himself, by coating them with collodion and dipping them in silver nitrate and exposing them in the camera while they were still wet. And this had to be done within 15 minutes before the collodion, which is a plastic, had dried. They had to carry a darkroom wherever they went, a tent or a wagon or something, in order to make the plate and develop it. So when, in 1871, an Englishman by the name of Maddox discovered a way of making plates with gelatin that could be dried, this was a tremendous breakthrough in photography. Not only was it easier to make photographs, you could go and buy them ready-made, the plates ready-made. And the plates were 60 times more sensitive than the wet plates.
Oh boy.
What photographers had figured to be in fractions of a minute became fractions of a second. For the first time, snapshots became possible. You could hold a camera in your hand and not on a tripod. This was a great breakthrough. Seed was one of the first to manufacture dry plates, I think, in St. Louis, about the time that George Eastman himself began to manufacture them in 1880. And then the fortunes of George Eastman grew and grew until he was finally in a position to buy up many of the other manufacturers. One thing that's happened within the last 10 years really is a remarkable appreciation of the value of photography on the part of an ever-increasing audience. There was a time when old photographs were not really given any attention at all except by a few freaks. And today, photography at last has become truly a collector's item. And the most extreme story that I can tell is of a book of photographs of the Civil War, published in 1866, just after the war, by Alexander Gardner, who had a photographic establishment. He worked with Brady for a while, and then he created his own.
Now, in your book, The History of Photography, are some illustrations from that sketchbook. This is one of them here. It is from the Civil War, and just a quick look at it here.
This is one of the more emotional pictures in the collection. This is the sharpshooter's last sleep. And they've found this chap that was shot down and was not discovered by the burial party, and it is a great document.
Thank you. Now, the sketchbook's value, you're saying, have really...
Well, this is an extreme example, but it's a very good one. When I was at Harvard as an undergraduate, I picked up volume 1 of this sketchbook for 50 cents. 50 original photographs pasted in a book.
For 50 cents?
For 50 cents. Then, after I joined the Museum of Modern Art and began collecting for them, I found volume 2 in a collector's place. He didn't want to sell it. So we argued about it, and he said, all right, I'll sell it to you for twice what I paid for it. He'd paid $15 for his copy. So the museum, and he said, if you will sell yours for twice, not more than twice what you paid for it. Not less than twice what you paid for it.
Not less than twice.
So the museum gave me $1 and gave him $30 for a mint condition of a book which sold at auction last year for $6,500. For the Amon Carter Museum of Western Art at Fort Worth, Texas, I'm organizing an exhibition of the work of the great pioneer photographer William Henry Jackson, and that will eventually be accompanied by a book. We're just in Denver a month ago with a research assistant. We looked at 25,000 of his negatives.
25,000?
25,000.
Oh, boy. Talk about prolific work, and these are...
That's only half of them, because these are the photographs taken west of the Mississippi, and the Library of Congress has the ones taken east of the Mississippi.
We thank you, Beaumont, so very much for coming. We've enjoyed talking with you, and I hope the next time you're on the West Coast that we'll be able to do this again.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for being with us.